try finding like a simple, clean-looking matchup table for the upcoming World Cup on Google right now.
Good luck with that.
Right. Go ahead and try it. You just, you will get buried in these fragmented links, but the actual usable brackets.
They're locked away.
Exactly. They're locked behind the paywalls and account logins of these massive digital fortresses like Facebook or Instagram or WeChat.
Yeah.
You're essentially locked out of basic global information unless you surrender your data at the gate. But meanwhile, right at this very second, there is a literal rocket hurtling through the vacuum of space, taking 4 fragile human beings to the far side of the moon.
It's a profound contradiction, really, because we are engineering these literal vehicles to conquer the infinite physical frontier of the solar system.
Yeah.
But down here on Earth, we are actively retreating into these inescapable, walled-off digital silos.
Yeah.
We're simultaneously expanding and shrinking at the exact same time.
Welcome to today's deep dive. I am so glad you're here with us today because we are charting that exact collision, the friction between our borderline godlike technological ambitions and the messy, mundane, deeply unpredictable human realities that constantly pull us back down to earth.
Always pulling us back down.
Always. And our roadmap for this today is a stack of insights distilled from the April 5, 2026 edition of the Sunday Blender.
It's a great newsletter.
It is. The editor actually opened their issue with that exact contrast between our lunar ambitions and our digital walls. And it provides just the perfect lens for everything we're unpacking today.
Definitely.
Okay, let's unpack this. If we want to look at the illusion of technological perfection just violently hitting human reality, we have to start with the companies building the AI that is, supposed to replace us.
Right. Because the assumption is always that these tech behemoths with their hundreds of billions in valuation, that they operate with flawless machine-like precision.
Like they're infallible.
Exactly. But the scaffolding holding up the AI revolution is actually surprisingly fragile. It's heavily reliant on brutal economics and, honestly, just simple human fatigue.
I mean, look at Anthropic.
Yeah.
This is a company valued at $380 billion.
It's with a B.
With a B. They build Claude, which is arguably one of the most sophisticated neural networks ever constructed.
Yeah.
And they just accidentally leaked 500,000 lines of their own source code.
Across 1,900 files.
Wait, I need to stop you there. 500,000 lines of code.
Yep. Specifically, the code for their Claude Code tool, and it just sat out in the open.
Wow.
It was mirrored on GitHub, downloaded and picked apart by thousands of developers, all because a security researcher named Chaifan Shou spotted it.
And posted it, right?
Yeah, he posted it, and it got like 21 million views on X.
But how does a $380 billion company just leave the recipe to their secret sauce out on the digital sidewalk? Like, don't they have layers of automated guardrails for this exact scenario?
You would think so, right? But the weak link in any technological fortress is always the door left propped open by the guards.
Right.
This wasn't some, zero-day exploit by a nation-state hacker. This was just a deployment pipeline error.
Or so, human error.
Completely.
Yeah.
When developers push software updates to a public registry like NPM, which is essentially a massive catalog where coders share basic building blocks, they use automated scripts. And someone simply forgot to configure a file to exclude the internal debug directories.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It is the digital equivalent of building a multi-billion-dollar biometric vault, but the architect accidentally left the master override password on a sticky note.
Just taped to the front door.
Taped to a pizza box in the lobby.
That is wild. And Anthropic actually admitted it was simple human error, and this is their second major leak in just over a year. No customer data was exposed, thankfully, but it completely shatters that aura of invincibility.
It really does.
And meanwhile, Sam Altman over at OpenAI is dealing with a very different kind of reality check. They just officially killed Sora.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is how quickly the narrative shifted from technological inevitability to cold, hard accounting.
Right.
Like in early 2024, those Sora video demos felt like magic.
They blew everyone away.
They made OpenAI look completely untouchable. But magic doesn't scale for free.
No, it doesn't. They launched it as a standalone app in September 2025 and just pulled the plug this week because the tool is burning through roughly $1 million a day.
A day.
A day in compute costs.
Huh.
How is generating video that much more expensive than, say, generating texts with ChatGPT?
It basically comes down to the underlying physics of the data.
Okay.
When an AI generates text, it's predicting the next word or token in a linear sequence. It's relatively lightweight. But video generation, that requires maintaining temporal consistency across space and time.
So it has to remember what happened a second ago.
Exactly. It's generating 60 high-resolution images for every single second of video, and it has to ensure the lighting, the physics, the geometry, none of that can warp from frame to frame.
Which takes massive power.
Huge amounts. It requires massive matrix multiplications, which means server farms running at absolute maximum capacity, drawing immense amounts of electricity.
So you have this astronomical cash burn, and to survive that, you'd need a massive addicted user base.
Which they didn't have.
Right. So Ulster's downloads completely collapsed. They peaked at around 3.3 million monthly downloads and then bled out to just over 1 million. Plus, competitors like ByteDance's Seedance 2.0 and Google's Veo, they didn't just catch up, they built better models.
Yeah, the competition moved fast.
So Altman realized the math was fatal and redirected those resources back to core text encoding models.
It is a massive retreat. The era of the dazzling blank check AI demo is basically over. The market is no longer asking, what can you build? They're asking, how can you run this without going bankrupt?
Right. But while OpenAI is retreating from the video frontier because they just can't afford the walls, other companies are proving that if you are backed into a corner, you can build an impenetrable digital citadel from scratch.
Oh, Huawei.
Yes, look at what Huawei has pulled off.
Their survival shouldn't have been possible. I mean, in 2019, the U.S. banned Huawei from using Google's Android.
Which is a death sentence for a phone.
Usually, yeah. For any smartphone manufacturer outside of Apple, losing Android isn't just losing an operating system, it's losing the digital water supply. You lose Google mobile services,
Right.
the underlying APIs that handle push notifications, location tracking, secure payment.
Everything.
Everything. Most companies would just fold.
But Huawei just launched HarmonyOS Next.
Yeah.
And the critical detail here is that this isn't just like a cosmetic skin slapped over old open source code.
No.
They rewrote the kernel entirely. There is zero Android code in this system.
The sheer scale of that engineering effort is staggering. They had to convince millions of developers to write new apps for a completely unproven architecture.
But they pulled it off because they had the domestic market.
Right. Because they had the captive market of domestic China, they could essentially force the transition. Today, HarmonyOS is running on over 1 billion devices.
1 billion.
1 billion. Phones, cars, TVs, laptops. Analysts project their PC shipments will grow tenfold this year and could eclipse Google's ChromeOS by 2027.
Wow. It's the ultimate forced fortress.
Yeah.
But, if Huawei built their walled garden out of survival, Elon Musk is leveraging infinite capital to voluntarily construct the ultimate monopoly with SpaceX.
Oh, the IPO filing.
Yes, they just confidentially filed for an IPO targeting a $1.75 trillion valuation.
Trillion.
Right, to raise $75 billion. That would be the largest public offering in the history of financial markets.
And we really have to look at the timing of this.
Okay.
This IPO filing comes just 2 months after SpaceX absorbed xAI, which is Musk's artificial intelligence company, in an all-stock deal valued at $1.25 trillion.
I am still trying to wrap my head around this synergy. You have rockets, Starlink satellite internet, the X social media platform, and the Grok AI model, all just mashed into one corporate entity.
Yeah.
What is the actual mechanical advantage of putting an AI and literal rockets under one roof?
It's all about data flow and infrastructure.
How so?
Think about it. Starlink provides a proprietary, low-latency communication web that blankets the entire globe. X provides a real-time, unfiltered stream of human consciousness and global events.
Oh, okay, I see where this is going.
Right. Grok is the intelligence engine that processes that data. And the rockets. They are the delivery mechanism ensuring no outside entity can ever disrupt the physical hardware in orbit.
So nobody can touch their servers.
Exactly. It's a completely closed loop. They don't need fiber optic cables laid by competitors. They basically own the atmosphere.
But there is a massive crack in the foundation of that $1.25 trillion xAI valuation.
Founders.
Yes. All 11 of the original xAI co-founders have walked out the door. All of them. Musk publicly stated the AI division is being rebuilt from the foundations up.
Yeah.
How does the market justify valuing an AI division at over $1 trillion when the brains who built the neural network just quit?
Because the market isn't valuing the architects anymore, it's valuing the real estate. Investors are betting that the sheer gravitational pull of Musk's infrastructure, The compute power, the energy access, the Starlink data pipe is so massive that it almost doesn't matter who is writing the code. The fortress itself is the product.
Musk is definitely trying to solve the future with infinite capital and closed ecosystems. But, as NASA is proving right now, infinite capital and brilliant engineering still have to negotiate with basic physical human biology.
Oh, Artemis II is the perfect illustration of that reality collision.
Absolutely. So on April 1st, NASA launched Artemis II. This is a monumental achievement. The first crewed lunar voyage since Apollo 17 back in 1972.
History in the making.
Truly, 4 astronauts are currently executing a 10-day flyby, looping around the far side of the moon. But the friction started before they even left the launch pad.
The leaks.
Right? They dealt with hydrogen fuel leaks in February, then a helium leak in the upper stage that delayed the launch even further.
Which, mechanically speaking, is standard. I mean, a modern rocket is essentially a controlled bomb.
Good point.
It's relying on deeply volatile, super-chilled elements just to escape Earth's gravity. The engineering tolerances are microscopic.
True, but here's where it gets really interesting, and it's a stark reminder of who is actually inside that machine. Hours after breaching the atmosphere, the toilet malfunctioned.
Yep.
A jammed fan disabled the urine collection system for 5 hours in zero gravity. You have 4 of the most highly trained humans in history strapped into a multi-billion-dollar pinnacle of human achievement, flying toward the moon, and they had to resort to using manual backup bags.
It completely strips away the romanticism of space exploration instantly.
It really does.
It forces us to remember that surviving the vacuum of space isn't just an orbital mechanics problem, it's a plumbing problem.
Right.
It is about keeping fragile biological systems functioning in an environment that is actively trying to kill them.
And while NASA is dealing with, jammed fans and dramatic launch delays on flybys, China is playing a highly methodical, quietly aggressive long game.
Exactly. China isn't treating the moon as a stage for a geopolitical PR stunt. They're treating it as a supply chain problem.
Which is smart.
Very. They are targeting a crewed landing by 2030, and the groundwork is happening right now. Later this year, Chang'e 7 launches to the moon's south pole to scout for water ice.
Because water ice isn't just for drinking. You can split it into hydrogen and oxygen for rocket fuel, right?
Precisely. If you have to launch fuel from Earth, you're paying tens of thousands of dollars per pound just to break orbit. But if you can manufacture fuel on the moon,
It changes everything.
it becomes a staging ground for the rest of the solar system. That is why their Chang'e 8 mission in 2028 is so critical. They are going to test 3D printing structures using actual lunar soil.
Building with moon dirt.
Yes, they are laying the foundation for an autonomous, permanent base. It is a genuine race for physical resources.
And whether you are trying to engineer a lunar base with 3D printed soil, or trying to engineer a specific outcome in human society, the math has to work.
It always comes back to the math.
It does. But as we saw with the astronauts, humans are the messy variable that ruins the math. Which leads us to a fascinating case study in top-down societal engineering. And before we dig into this, I need to make something explicitly clear to you listening. We're not taking political sides here.
Not at all.
Our mandate today is simply to look at the verifiable data and the outcomes reported in our source material. We're just looking at the numbers.
And this is a crucial distinction, because we are really examining Goodhart's law here, the idea that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Right. So 12 years ago, the San Francisco School District instituted a massive policy shift. They completely removed algebra from middle schools.
Completely.
The stated goal was equity. They believed that delaying the subject would close racial gaps in math achievement.
But the data demands a reckoning, and the data showed a systemic failure. Following the removal of the class, 8th grade math proficiency district-wide dropped from 51% to 40%. And for Black students, which was the demographic, the policy explicitly aimed to help proficiency plummeted from 11% down to just 4%.
Just 4%.
It also triggered a severe decline in students enrolling in advanced math, like AP Calculus, once they reached high school.
Because the policy removed the class, but it couldn't remove the human drives to get ahead. Wealthier families simply bypassed the school system entirely.
Exactly.
They hired private tutors or enrolled their kids in independent math academies. So the students who couldn't afford outside help were left stranded, and the achievement gap actually widened.
This raises an important question about how we design systems. When you try to artificially engineer an outcome by lowering the ceiling rather than raising the floor, human behavior will invariably find a workaround.
And the pushback was immense. In 2024, 82% of voters approved a measure demanding algebra be reinstated.
82% is a massive majority.
Huge. And finally, on March 24 of this year, the school board voted 4-3 to bring it back. The newsletter actually included a comic that perfectly captured the frustration. A student asks, "Teacher, will we ever use any of this algebra?" And the teacher replies, "You won't, but one of the smart kids might."
Wow.
Yeah. Parent groups were openly asking how the city serving as the global capital of AI innovation could simultaneously refuse to teach its kids foundational math.
It is the ultimate failure of top-down systemic planning. But, if San Francisco is a story of top-down failure, we have to look at what happens when human drive operates purely from the bottom up, completely defying the established math.
Oh, the ZXMoto story.
It's credible.
I could not believe this when I read it. If you want a masterclass in how raw human passion can dismantle a legacy fortress, this is it. So ZXMoto is a Chinese motorcycle brand based in Chongqing. They were founded exactly 2 years ago in April 2024.
Just 2 years.
And on March 28th and 29th, they showed up at the World Supersport Championship in Portugal and completely shattered the established order.
To grasp the magnitude of this, you have to understand that motorcycle racing at this tier is controlled by century-old European and Japanese titans.
Big guys.
Ducati, Yamaha, Kawasaki. These brands have infinite R&D budgets and massive engineering departments.
And ZXMoto just humiliated them. In their very first season at this level, their French rider, Valentin Debais, took their 820 RRS bike and dominated.
Crushed them.
He won race 1 by nearly 4 seconds and then swept the weekend by winning race 2. And a kicker. The retail version of that winning bike costs about $6,000.
Unbelievable.
It's a fraction of the cost of a Ducati. How is that mechanically possible?
It is the advantage of extreme agility versus corporate bureaucracy.
Right.
A legacy brand might take 3 years and 20 committee meetings just to redesign a chassis. ZXMoto's founder, Zhang Xu, bypasses the bureaucracy.
He just builds it.
Exactly. The underlying mechanics of the bike aren't magic. It is rapid, relentless prototyping driven by a man who intuitively understands the raw physics of racing.
Zhang Xu's background is really the heart of this whole thing. He was born in a village in Hunan province in 1987. He only has a junior high education.
Right.
By 16, he was a mechanic. At 19, he literally chased a TV production crew in the pouring rain for over 100 kilometers on his bike, just begging for a chance to show them he could race.
The dedication is insane.
He raced until he was penniless, worked on assembly lines, and finally risked everything to found ZXMoto 2 years ago. And less than 24 months later, this guy, with a middle school education, is standing on the world stage in tears, watching his $6,000 machine outrun the greatest engineering firms on Earth.
It proves that while fortresses like OpenAI or Ducati seem impenetrable, sheer, unyielding human passion can tear down the walls overnight.
Yeah.
Things change violently fast. A startup can win a world championship, and at the exact same time, the most untouchable legends inevitably begin to crumble.
Time comes for everyone. Look at Tiger Woods.
Yeah, that's stuff.
5 green jackets, 15 majors. He held the world #1 ranking for a staggering 683 weeks. Today, he is ranked 3,736 in the world.
His body is just a map of the trauma required to achieve that greatness.
Absolutely.
A devastating car crash in 2021, a ruptured Achilles in 2025, 7 back surgeries. He finished dead last among those who made the cut at the 2024 Masters.
And now, following a DUI arrest after a rollover crash on March 27, he stepped away from the sport to seek treatment and will miss the April 9 Masters. The physical toll finally outpaced the mental drive.
It is the fading of an empire, and we are watching the exact same tectonic shift happen in global soccer right now.
We really are. The 2026 World Cup kicks off on June 11 across North America. It's the largest ever with 48 teams, but it feels like a massive closing chapter.
It's the end of an era.
This is almost certainly the last World Cup for Lionel Messi at 38 and Cristiano Ronaldo at 41.
But the vacuum left by those fading legends is already being filled.
Who are you watching?
You have 18-year-old Lamine Yamal from Spain stepping onto the global stage as arguably the most dangerous player alive right now. You have Erling Haaland dragging Norway back to the tournament for the first time since 1998.
Which is huge for them.
And then you have the absolute methodical dismantling of the old guard by Japan.
The Samurai Blue. On March 31st, Japan walked into Wembley Stadium and beat England 1-0.
And that isn't an isolated upset. With that victory over England, Japan has now defeated 7 of the 8 nations that have ever won a men's World Cup.
Wait, 7 out of 8?
7 out of 8. Uruguay, Argentina, France, Germany, Spain, Brazil, and England. The only legacy champion they haven't beaten is Italy.
And the irony is, Italy didn't even qualify for this World Cup.
Right.
A four-time champion missed the tournament for the third straight time after losing to Bosnia on penalties.
Yeah.
How did Japan orchestrate this rise?
It is a masterclass in long-term structural planning.
Right.
This isn't just a fluke generation of players.
Right.
Decades ago, Japan recognized they lacked the physical size of European teams, so they completely re-engineered their youth academies to focus on flawless technical precision and tactical discipline.
Play to their strengths.
Exactly. They systematically exported their best players to top European leagues to gain experience, and then integrated that elite tactical knowledge back into their national squad. Coach Hajime Moriyasu says their goal is to win the entire World Cup. And looking at the data, it's a mathematical possibility.
Time isn't just about the old guard falling, though. It's about how the past constantly echoes into our present and shapes who we are. The newsletter featured this concept of ancestor math, and it absolutely broke my brain.
Oh, this was fascinating.
Right. To be born today, you require 12 previous generations covering roughly the last 400 years. That requires exactly 4,096 ancestors.
4,096 distinct human lives.
Yes.
Every single one of those individuals had to survive wars, plagues, famines, and childbirth in an era without modern medicine.
And they had to survive just long enough to meet one specific person at one specific moment to continue a biological chain that eventually resulted in you sitting here listening to this deep dive.
It makes you feel incredibly small, but also impossibly rare.
We are literally built out of the echoes of the past, and culture works the exact same way. Take April Fool's Day. The leading historical theory is that it started in 1582 when France switched to the Gregorian calendar.
Okay.
They moved New Year's Day to January 1, and the people who didn't get the memo and still celebrated in the spring were mocked and called April Fish.
April Fish?
Yeah, April Fish. And in Scotland, they have a variation called Taily Day, entirely dedicated to pranks involving people's backsides.
That thread of culture never breaks. It just adapts. Our modern pop culture is completely fueled by these echoes. Look at the video game Elden Ring.
Oh, yeah.
It sold 30 million copies, and now A24 is adapting it into a live-action movie.
Set to come out in 2027 with Alex Garland directing. He wrote a 160-page script on speculation and literally flew to Japan to pitch Hataka Miyazaki in person.
Set footage is already leaking on TikTok.
Or look at the upcoming sci-fi movie Project Hail Mary, starring Ryan Gosling. It's a high-concept story about saving Earth, but the emotional core of the film hinges on Sandra Hüller's character singing a pop song from 2017.
Oh, Harry Styles, right.
Yes, Harry Styles' Sign of the Times.
Just stop your crying, have the time of your life breaking through the atmosphere. A piece of past pop culture perfectly recontextualized to give profound meaning to a story about the future.
And speaking of reconciling the past, Apple celebrated its 50th anniversary on April 1 at Apple Park. They threw a massive private concert, and the headliner was Sir Paul McCartney.
The historical poetry of that is incredible.
It really is, because the Beatles founded Apple Corps in 1968, and they spent decades in brutal trademark lawsuits with Steve Jobs' Apple computer. Having McCartney play Beatles hits at the tech giant's headquarters is the ultimate hatchet burial.
Time grants us those second chances. It allows us to salvage things we thought were ruined. Consider Stephen King.
Oh, the Carrie story.
Yeah. On April 5, 1974, he published Carrie, his first novel, but he actually hated the early draft.
Really?
He was writing on a secondhand typewriter in a laundry room, got frustrated, and threw the manuscript in the garbage. His wife, Tabitha, physically fished the crumpled paper out of the trash and told him it had potential.
Her reaching into the trash gave the world The Shining, The Shawshank Redemption, and 350 million books sold.
It's wild.
It shows you that hope is sometimes just deciding not to throw something away, which perfectly mirrors the story of Timmy the whale.
That was a tough one.
It was. In early March, a humpback whale wandered into Germany's Baltic Sea chasing herring and got stranded. The entire nation stopped. Rescuers dug channels with excavators. The whale freed itself twice, only to get trapped in a fishing net. Finally, on April 1st, marine experts had to call off the rescue because intervening further would only cause the animal more agony.
That outcome was tragic, but the human response is the actual takeaway there. Think about it. In a world completely obsessed with trillion-dollar AI fortresses and lunar resource extraction, millions of people pause their lives to care deeply about the suffering of one lost animal. It highlights our profound capacity for empathy.
So what does this all mean? We have covered Anthropic's leaked code, a broken toilet in space, a middle school dropout beating Ducati, the fall of Tiger Woods, and a stranded whale. How does this massive, chaotic blender of human experience actually tie together?
I think the clearest answer was written almost 1,000 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah. In the year 1076, the Chinese poet Su Shi wrote a piece called Shudiao Guttu during the Mid-Autumn Festival. He was drinking wine, staring up at the full moon, and aching for his brother, whom he hadn't seen in years.
wow.
The closing lines translate to, and I'll paraphrase a bit, but rare is perfect happiness, the moon does wax, the moon does wane, and so men meet and say goodbye, I only pray our life be long, and our souls together heavenward fly.
That's beautiful.
It is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about those 4 Artemis astronauts. They are flying around the dark side of that exact same moon right now, wrestling with high-tech stress and biological realities, but they're orbiting the very same celestial body Su Shi stared at.
Right.
In literature, the moon is the ultimate symbol of longing, of reunion, and of our shared reality. It reminds us that despite our towering digital walls, our catastrophic human errors, and our desperate drive to engineer the future, we are all ultimately bound together under the exact same sky.
That is the perfect distillation. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey today. We started by looking at the friction between our grandest technological ambitions and our messy reality, and we found that the messiness, the passion, the errors, the second chances is the only thing that actually drives us forward. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about your day. We talked about that ancestor math. It took exactly 4,096 people surviving famines, navigating wars, and finding connection over 400 years, just so the biological chain would remain unbroken, allowing you to be here listening to this today.
It's a lot of people.
It is.
Yeah.
So looking forward, how many future generations are relying on the actions we take right now in this messy, chaotic age of AI and lunar bases to ensure they have a world worth inheriting?
Something to think about.
Definitely. Stay curious, keep pushing boundaries, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.